Along the topic of emancipation, contemplating right occupation for the individual seasteader is certainly worth some contemplation. I am reminded today of an old adage, source unknown, who said, or as the saying goes, that the currency of kings is gold, the merchant class trades in silver, and the poor man and the slave trade in debt. And I think as we go forward into the future, that reality is going to become radically more conspicuous, and it'll be easier to tell where your sovereignty lies on the relative hierarchy of man by what it is that you use as your currency. But also it is interesting to contemplate in this context what it is that one does for occupation and whether or not that occupation has inherent sovereignty in it or not. I mean, it is possible, although over the last few decades probably the least rewarded, to earn your way in the world by being a productive, creative individual, being a first-order producer of value. I mean, this is simple. The woodcutter does that, the fisherman does that, the boat builder does that, creates high value out of low value objects by the labor of one's hands and one's skill, and delivers those creations directly, in fact, to the individuals that will use those. But the other way of making a living, if it isn't pure extortion, assuming we're not of the extortion class, is to earn your living through compliance, meaning that you create, in fact, no value, but your role in society is to do the bidding of other people, and you, much like a kept animal, are rewarded with your livelihood for your compliance to the whims of your masters. And there's a tremendous difference in the psychological head state of individuals who are first-order creators of value as opposed to those individuals who earn their living through compliance. And it should be obvious to us as to why there is such a significant difference in the posture of an individual who earns a living through compliance as opposed to one who earns a living by being creative. The creative individual is not dependent on hierarchical authority. In fact, they find hierarchical authority often an impediment to their creativity. But the compliant individual who serves hierarchical authority is desperately wedded to it, for if hierarchical authority were to withhold the feeding hand, well, one is dependent on that. One doesn't bite the feeding hand. It's not by accident that so much of the economy in developed Western societies is born by and created by, quote unquote, the activities, the consumer activities of individuals who are of the compliant class, the dependent class, we should say. Because there's tremendous latent control in that. A creative individual who has the option of creating what they want for whom they want has a completely different posture to authority than an individual that is dependent on authority. And for any of us that would like to seek to emancipate ourselves from being dependent on a destructive, technocratic control state, should contemplate what it is that we do for a living and how we transact our business. It's essential that as part of the human ecosystem, and unless our way of making our livelihood in the world is congruent with the autonomy that we wish to have, we have really no hope of being successful there. I thought I'd lay that out quickly this morning, something to chew on.